In professional sports, a franchise player is an athlete who is not simply the best player on their team, but one that the team can build their franchise around for the foreseeable future.
Welcome back into a brand new edition of Franchise Players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com live every Friday afternoon. You can catch us on multiple terrestrial radio stations in the Triad, 5 o'clock in the TGI Friday lineup on WWVG 1470 AM, at 6 o'clock if you missed it in Winston-Salem on WTOB 980 AM, 96.7 FM. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, bringing you the best from content creators, hosts, writers, athletes, coaches from around the Triad, and more. Loaded show today. We've got Joe Deleone from the Bleav Podcast Network. He's going to preview the college football playoffs for us. Of course, Alabama taking on Michigan and Texas taking on Washington for the right to play for the national championship next week. So we'll get into his thoughts on that. And did they get the four right? And the keys to the game for both of those. And then we've got David Glenn coming in his bi-weekly jaunt. We usually do Sports Buffet with David Glenn, but I'm moving all that out, and we're going to talk FSU versus the ACC. One of the best legal minds I can think of is Mr. David Glenn, and I want to find out how feasible is it for FSU to actually leave the ACC? Because there are people out there, some of them my friends, that think that this is the beginning of the end of the ACC. I'm like, not so fast. I'm not sure if this is actually where this is going to begin. So DG will be in to clean up here at the end of the show. Before we begin, shout out to Bleav Podcast Networks for a fantastic year. This is year 4, I think I am with Bleav, doing Bleav in Panthers. So just shout out to them. Shout out to everyone that's come in and subscribed and rated Tobacco Road Sports Radio over the past year. It's been our biggest year yet. Thank you guys for getting us over 1,000 subscribers a couple months ago. And thanks to everyone who stopped by at any of the shows, podcasts, shorts, anything that we've done over the past year. And just keep an eye out because we're still in the middle of growing and doing some things. So keep an eye out for that. Starting us off today, he's part of the 4-Man Rush. You can catch them on Twitter/X and YouTube. Podcasts, analysis, good stuff, good film stuff, especially with the season end session. Kevin Avery joining the 4-Man Rush. What's going on, brother? How you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, Des? Great to be back on with you again. How you feeling?
I'm good, man. Christmas was good to me. I got on a little Christmas swag or whatever, so I'm feeling pretty good. It finally stopped raining up here, so I'm enjoying today. So what I wanted to do, of course, we always give you a little bit of Carolina Panther content in this, and I wanted to do a little true false with Kev. So let's just go ahead and start it off. The past couple of weeks, rookie quarterback Bryce Young has taken a step forward. He's looked pretty good, and each week feels like it's progression on the week prior. Bryce Young is a game changer, true or false?
Currently, I'm gonna say false. Are you speaking in a manner like the Cam game changer versus game manager thing?
Yeah. Me and Monty were talking about this last time. We probably could have talked for 2 hours about this topic. I guess the question really is, do you feel like Bryce Young is a game changer or a game manager? Because to me, you are what you are when you first show up. You don't turn into a game changer. Like you're a game changer and Pop Warner. You know what I mean? Like that when you see that kid, you're like, that's a game changer. Like you know what it looks like. Is Bryce a game changer or is he a game manager? I feel like I know what you want to say. I can see it. I feel like I know what you want to say. It's not bad. It's not bad, Kev. Go ahead. It's not bad.
Yeah. I'm gonna say he's a game. I'm gonna say he's a game manager.
It's not a bad thing. It's not.
No. It's
that's the problem.
It's not a bad thing. It's that connotation that game manager means you're just in there, and as long as you don't turn the ball over and stay out the way, the team should be just good enough to win. Now I don't see it like that. The way this roster is presently constructed, this is definitely a game managing situation for Bryce Young.
He could thrive. Man. Like I consider Tua Tagovailoa a game manager, but look what he's managing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like what he's doing around him. Like that is not a bad connotation. I feel like I feel like the media.
When you got a Ferrari and a Lamborghini on the outside, I mean, manage those well.
You got a couple Porsches in the backfield too. Like, I mean, like he's literally like surrounded with talent. That's the dream for us with Bryce, right? Like we're hoping that we can build an offense similar to Miami to put around Bryce so that he can actually do that too. In that situation, he's not a game changer. He's managing the game, and like I was looking through it, I was like, okay, Tom Brady, ultimate game manager, like the best of all time, but that was his game. It really was. Drew Brees, top 5 probably all time game manager. I like if he had stuff around him, I mean, the dude was throwing Michael Thomas. You know what I mean? Like if he had stuff around him, he's gonna be able to do what he's gonna do. The only one I was like, okay, technically he's a game manager, but there's something different about him was Peyton Manning. And really, that was more mental. You know what I mean? Like he dissected the game in terms of like Luke Kuechly dissected the game from the other side. Like if it was that easy, everybody would do it. So I thought I slept on it last night because I called Peyton Manning a game manager, and I woke up. I'm like, no, he can actually affect the game in other ways that people can't. And that was kind of my definition. So I'd put Peyton Manning as a game changer. Now, Cam was right when he said there's really only 3 or 4 that exist at any given time in the NFL. And right now, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Aaron Rodgers were the 4 that he said. And I would agree with that. Somebody like Anthony Richardson, we haven't seen enough, but we can say he would be a game changer if he meets all of his potential or whatever. But that's just the thing to me, like game changers, you see them in high school. You know what I mean? Like when you're watching from the crowd, you see some dude that's like just 3 times faster than everybody else, and he's just doing like this, like running past people. That's a game. Like you see him, like, oh, that dude's gonna play on Saturday. That dude's gonna play on Sunday. Game managers can grow into ultimate game managers, but they can't grow into game changers, in my opinion. Game changers can grow into game managers. Like we wanted Cam to become a game manager. Remember, like we wanted him to kind of tighten it up a little bit. That's my kind of thing. We never wanted Tom Brady to, rush for 150 yards and you know what I mean? Like just, I don't know. There's a clear difference to me. So to that, I'm like, Cam was 1,000% correct. Let me get back on the Panthers real quick though. Jeremy Chin, safety Jeremy Chin. We were sold a bill of goods. So this dude was going to be all over the place this year. He has been non-existent. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what happened, but Jeremy Chin will not be a Panther next year. True or false?
True.
Dang it.
And that hurts me to say that because I'm a big time Jeremy Chin fan. Me as too. You know, he's a relative of NFL legend safety. Steve Atwater. Yeah. One of those. Yeah. Steve Atwater. Yeah. Bring back. Yeah. So coming out of college, looking at his film, the versatility. I mean, he was playing corner, he was playing safety, he's playing dime linebacker. So, you really felt like he had a chess piece that you could plug in anywhere defensively. And like you said, coming into the season, we were sold a bill of goods like, watch what we do with Chin. And, it was just talk of, big nickel versus regular nickel and, these type of things. And, we're in nickel sub packages 80% of the time anyway. But it just seemed like we just could never get him on the field. And then, the late signing of cornerback Troy Hill, who's dominated the nickel cornerback reps.
He's played well.
That's right. Well, but now he's out with concussion. He's on concussion protocol from what I read on the injury report. So, could Chin, get more snaps, coming up, these last 2 games? It's just hard pressed for me to see, and it's not his fault. Like, don't be surprised if Chin goes to a team that knows how to use him, and he goes off. And we look about why ain't do that with us? Well,
that's our story, man. That's what we do.
That's what we
send them on their way, and then they balloon out, and they're like, because I can see him on like Buffalo. Buffalo's the first thing that comes to mind. He'll be in Buffalo next year underneath McDermott, and he's going to look like a superstar. Like, I can't figure out why he can't get on the field. Like, because he can play multiple spots, and you would think in Avery's defense that he would find a home someplace. He just hasn't been able to stick. And this is year 4 of his rookie contract. So, I mean, the Panthers are going to have a decision. Well, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. They didn't extend him or anything. So, would he come back here after not playing this year, really? I don't think so. I think you're right on that one. So, Kevin Avery from the 4-Man Rush joining us here to start off the show. Franchise Players New Year's edition here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and WWBG 1470 AM. Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh has been in the news a lot the past couple of weeks. Just had some the stuff from the summer notice of allegations from the NCAA handed down to them. He's been suspended twice in this season, yet his team is the number one seed in the college football playoff, and they're going to be taking on 4 seed Alabama this weekend. Jim Harbaugh will not leave college football this year. True or false?
I'm going to say true.
True, he won't leave?
Yeah, he won't leave. I think he'll definitely remain in the NFL. I mean, in the NCAA. I truly feel that way. In spite of all of these, allegations and things of that nature, I just feel like his personality, I don't think he want to bail out on those terms. It's kind of like, a save face. Let me justify, myself, and let me, clear up, the family name, behind all of this. So I could see him staying in college and continuing to coach. For last I heard that Michigan was prepared to offer him something around $11 million a season on a new deal.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Like a 5-year, $11 million.
I thought it was a 10-year deal. Well, I thought it was like 10 years or something like that. But he has to agree to not pursue NFL jobs or something if he signs it or something like that. So I think his ultimate goal is to get back to the NFL. But I think the goal before that is to get a national championship for Michigan. I think if he say in the next 2 weeks, Michigan wins the whole thing, they win the national championship, that would be the time to go if he's going to go. Because to be honest, the NCAA been on him Monty's been on these dudes on Twitter, literally, they've been on Harbaugh's neck all year. And some of the stuff, I'm just like, for real? He just bought some hamburgers for some kids or whatever. And this is a violation. It's a 3-game suspension, but we got dudes that are getting $1 million NIL deals now. It just don't make any sense. I would get tired of it after a while. So if he left, I'm thinking Bears, Panthers, Chargers, played for all 3. He was sniffing around us last year. We were the ones that didn't want him. Now look at us. Look at us in hindsight. Maybe we messed up. So I don't know. That's an interesting one though. But I agree with you. This temperament's really more suited for college probably and dealing with young men as opposed to people with mortgages and children. So I don't know. It's almost like if he goes to the NFL, it's only going to be for a 4-year window before it starts to wear off a little bit. So
right.
So that's a good assessment there. Defensive end Brian Burns will sign a long-term deal in the offseason with the Carolina Panthers. True or false?
True. My reason being the fact that we passed up 2 first-round picks and a third, I believe, that was offered by the Rams for him.
From my understanding, they came back around and we turned them down again. so I don't. What are we? Golly. What are we doing? What are we doing, Kev?
Like I said, man, it's just and the crazy part is it's not like we're salary cap strapped and things like that. And there's you probably know a little bit about it because I've heard you discuss it on Bleav with Skylar and Jonathan. When it comes to the salary cap, there's things of spreading the guaranteed money out. Putting a lot of the bonus. You can create more salary cap with these contract extensions. And from where I played around with, I think currently right now we're sitting at around 40 million, but with a 5-year extension to both him and Frankie Louvu, that would generate us getting another 20-25 million to use towards the salary cap. It's all about where you how you spread out the guaranteed money and things of that nature. So signing Brian Burns to a long-term extension could only, help and benefit us, not only on the field, but, salary cap as wise. Cause, he said, and I think he just recently said that he wants to be here in Carolina.
He did. Yeah. Right. Earlier this week in the locker room, he said he doesn't like change. And he mentioned that he could have left Florida State because he was at Florida State while they were kind of going down, and he didn't. He decided to stick around. He said he hates change and he wants to be here and everything else, which sounded great. I'm not worried about him. I'm more worried about the Panthers because since Tepper took over, they've only signed one big contract, and that was Christian McCaffrey, and he's not here. they decided, that was too big, and then they traded him back out. So it's been 6 years. It's been 6 years. David Tepper has not handed out any money to anybody in 6 years, really, not big time money. So. Well, I don't know. And plus, they're going to use the stats this year against him. He's been doubled like every play, like literally all year. So I think he's got 6 sacks he's sitting on right now. We'll see how he plays throughout the rest of the year. Real quick, rapid fire before I get you out of here. General Manager Scott Fitter will not be fired at the end of the season. True or false?
False.
You think he's out of here?
I think he's out of here.
Why is he still here? Why is he still here? You don't even go to the school. Why is he still here?
Man. One thing I've seen with Tepper is that he when he cleans house, he does it. He splits the work. Like you saw how the Chargers, they got rid of both their coach and general manager at the same time. Matter of fact, what I think the rumor was he was actually fired at halftime. From what I heard.
Oh, that one. He probably. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. When they got beat like 63, it was like 42-0 at the half. I mean, it was just
that poor reporter tried to interview him as he was walking off the field, going into the locker room at halftime. It's like, what do you say? Like, we're getting destroyed. Like, what do you want me to say here? But I saw somebody say Brandon Staley is going to be a good option for the Panthers. I'm like, you must be out your mind. Like, why would we want Brandon Staley? Like,
no, why we want to bring that? Why we want to bring that here? But back to the subject. As you know, I defended Scott Fitter. I said because since Matt Rule had final say on personnel decisions, I wasn't going to judge Scott Fitter based on this year's free agents and draft class. And the bumbling around with Brian Burns' contract kind of is just. Has stymied me. Like, bro, what do you like? Why are we trying to lowball this guy? Like, he has all the leverage. He has earned his money. You see a lot of fans talking about, oh, but he only has 6 or 7 sacks, and you don't realize the impact that he played. Like, it's I get that position. Sacks are a sexy stat, but I mean, let's talk about how much better of a run defender Brian Burns is. How much he sets the edge a lot better. How much gap integrity he has. Now, every once in a while, he does get blown off the ball, but that happens to everybody. I've seen Aaron Donald get blown back and put on his back before. So things happen to the best of his football, but just overall his resume, we definitely need it, and I think when Shaq Thompson, came back on a lesser deal, he would say it was guys like Brian Burns that made him want to come back. He's like, these are my guys I want to ride for. If I die for, if I lose, I want to lose with these guys. When I win, I want to win with these guys. So I think that it's a business, but it's also a real brotherhood there. And I just really feel like that Scott Fitter is not the guy to maintain that brotherhood and to move forward with the coaching. I definitely want a GM that's going to be able to pick the next coach. But again, with David Tepper, we don't know how he's going to do it.
Yeah. So the more days that go by, it makes me feel like he ain't going nowhere. Because I'm like, how you fire a dude that's only doing what you asked him to do? You know what I mean? Like, he's only mainly doing what Tepper's asking him to do. Some of it blew up, some of it worked out. But to kind of put it on Fitter when we all sat back and were like, well, Tepper's the one that's really telling him what to do, and now they're going to fire Fitter. I don't know. I don't. He's still here. Like, so I'm kind of like, I don't know if they are going to fire him. He might end up surviving this. So we'll see, though. But I got to get you out of here. I got David Glenn coming in right behind you. Follow the 4-Man Rush on Twitter at 4-Man Rush. That's the number 4 OURMANRUSH. Kev Montifetti, who you see each week on Embrace Debate on the Fans First Sports Network with me and Cody from the C3 podcast and more. Definitely go check them out. Season's still going on. Panthers taking on the Jags Sunday at 1 o'clock this Sunday, and Trevor Lawrence might not be playing. He's got a sprained AC joint in his throwing shoulder, so he hadn't practiced all week up to this point. We'll see if he's going to actually show up in Jacksonville. Kev, appreciate you coming on, bro.
Hey, thanks again, Des. It was a pleasure, and let's hope we can finish out 2 wins and head into this offseason with some momentum, bro.
It felt good. It felt, we didn't even win, and it felt good, like just competing. That's how we are. Just compete. Just compete, Panthers, please.
Yeah. Just and on the basketball note, go Heels.
Yes, we back. We back, baby. We back. We've been quiet all this time. We outside this year, so we back.
Yeah, we outside.
We outside. We got my man David Glenn coming in just a bit. You're listening to Franchise Players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.
Franchise players are often referred to as the face of the franchise.
Welcome back into Franchise Players here on WWBG 1470 AM, part of the TGI Friday lineup here every Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. You can hear it in Greensboro. If you miss it, you can hear the replay in Winston-Salem on WTOB 980 AM, 96.7 FM. And of course, you can watch it on youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio. Joining us for his bi-weekly jaunt through Franchise Players, he is from the North Carolina Sports Network. You can follow him at David Glenn's show, Mr. David Glenn. What's going on, DG?
Hey, Des, great to be with you. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, early Happy New Year to you. All the above. Good to be with you.
Feels good. 2024 looks like it's going to be a good year for everybody. Everybody doing some things, making some moves. Make sure you go follow North Carolina Sports Network on YouTube, where you can get new episodes of the David Glenn Show. Normally we do Sports Buffet when I have DG in the house, so I can kind of take advantage of him knowing about a multitude of things. But this week, I wanted to actually focus on one particular topic, and that's Florida State versus the ACC. Since the last time we talked, Florida State's basically taken the ACC to court regarding the grant of rights. The ACC has countersued FSU for suing them. And I've had discussions with JP Mundy and others about the validity of this. And I want you to kind of first set the table. What is FSU doing? Like, what are they trying to do here in a court of law? And I'm asking you this because you being a lawyer, you know the legalese here that some of us are just assuming. So first, let's just go through that. What is FSU trying to do here?
Well, FSU wants to leave the Atlantic Coast Conference, and Florida State has really exhausted all of its other options that would lead to a quick and easy and inexpensive departure from the ACC. For example, if you somehow got the majority of existing ACC members to disband the conference, well, then, which is not easy and it's not going to happen. Right. Obviously, that would allow FSU to leave without worrying about an exit fee, without worrying about the grant of rights all the way through 2036. If you could get a significant number of ACC teams to leave with you, that would threaten the conference in ways that could disturb the way the actual grant of rights and the exit fee are applied. You could just say the heck with it and, get private equity to bankroll you for a while. They explored that. It's not quite as easy as a lot of the FSU media one time said it was going to be. And, they're not going to get out on some kind of a weird state sovereignty claim, which, again, is one of the now countless examples over the last 11 years of a lot of folks, some media members, but also some pseudo media members, suggesting something quick and easy, and of course that falling by the wayside very predictably if you actually talk to people who know what they're talking about. But what FSU knows here, even if the Seminoles know, the chances of them leaving quickly are zero, and the chances of the Seminoles leaving the ACC at no penalty are zero. They know that. Their attorneys are smart people. However, they believe that this break glass in case of emergency. We know none of those other scenarios are going to happen. We know the Big Ten and the SEC, the two rich conferences, are not going to extend an invitation, even though we FSU are a desirable football commodity. There's no doubt about it. In a vacuum, would the Big Ten be interested in FSU? Yes, no doubt about it. We don't live in a vacuum. And Big Ten has told Florida State, get your legal mess figured out or you are not a candidate. And some Florida State fans don't want to hear that.
They wouldn't have the
That's
TV.
The reality. So you file this lawsuit knowing you're not going to win on all counts, knowing that you're going to advance every legal argument you can, as you should, if this is the way you feel like you need to go, but knowing that the ACC on a lot of contract law issues, which I've practiced contract law since 1994, a lot of the contract laws favor the ACC, the issues there, in my opinion. And there's also antitrust issues that are harder to predict, in my opinion, and definitely more complicated than the contract law issues. The bottom line is, if Florida State can advance this thing to a point where maybe a judge says, your argument here is pretty good, or the ACC did not follow its rules here in its negotiations with ESPN. If you get to the point where down the road, and I'm talking about more than a year down the road, not the first judge, but an important judge down the road, at some point is going to say to both sides, Des, hey, lawyers representing the ACC, in my opinion, you have a really strong case, but you do not have a 100% chance of victory on every issue. And they're going to say to the Florida State attorneys, sir, ma'am, you have some interesting legal arguments, and on some of them, your chance of winning is greater than 0%. Now, the judge is not going to tell you it's 20% or 40%. They're just going to say you have some valid points here that are worth further exploring. Well, the more the ACC attorneys hear what they want to hear, the strength of their arguments, well, then the more the ACC has leverage. The more the Florida State attorneys hear what they want to hear, hey, this antitrust issue or this contractual issue is intriguing and you have a chance to win here as the discovery process continues, well, then the more FSU's attorneys feel like they have at least some leverage. So what's going to happen eventually, Des? We know Florida State is not going to pay the contractual amount, $572 million to leave.
Sir. No.
Excuse me. We also know they're not going to pay zero to leave.
Yeah.
As the legal process unfolds, both sides are going to have a much better grasp of their chance of victory. And at that point, the judge won't end up saying this, but if the judge ended up saying, you have a 50% chance of winning and you have a 50% chance of winning, why don't y'all just cut the number in half and move on with your lives? Like that is a hypothetical scenario before you get in front of a jury someday, before you get into a judge making some final legal decisions. Again, all these things are going to take time. Florida State's filed its lawsuit in Florida. The ACC filed its lawsuit in North Carolina. So you got to fight jurisdictional lawsuits even before you get to the brunt of the case. It's going to take a while. Florida State's going to have to pay a significant amount of money to leave. But is that number going to be $100 million? Is it going to be $500 million? That's why you got to follow the legal process as judges start to tell both sides, where their arguments are good and where they might win, and where their arguments are ridiculous and where they're likely to lose.
So here's my question, because we keep hearing that buyout number, which is basically the operating budget of the ACC times 3, if I'm not mistaken, plus there's a fee in there, so it all comes up to like $572 million. But from my understanding, the way the grant of rights addendum was written, the ACC owns the TV rights to Florida State, regardless of what happens. So even if they pay that fee, they still wouldn't have their TV rights, right? Like they would still belong to the ACC. So what are they paying the fee for?
Well, the negotiated settlement, if you eventually said, if a judge said, why don't y'all, or a mediator says, get in a room and figure it out. Florida State wants a divorce. And once one party is adamant about a divorce, really it becomes a matter of picking a number.
Yeah.
And the ACC is going to want that number as close to $572 million as possible. Obviously, Florida State wants it as small as possible. But when you settle, you can say, well, the ACC gets the pick a number, $400 million, but now the Seminoles have the right to market their own media rights. So the
they
ACC
would kind of be buying the rights back.
Yeah, they're buying them back, essentially.
Okay.
So that's how that would work.
So my thing too, and this was kind of my argument to the whole thing, because the ones that have argued with me about it, they're like, well, the ACC has not acted in good faith on the contract. And that's the argument that Florida State can use. My thing is, how do you prove that they haven't acted in good faith, like in a court of law? Like, it's one thing to sit around a lunch table and discuss this, like with your friends. And, it's different in a court of law to prove that the ACC has acted in bad faith towards the teams in the league. Plus, the ACC is it's almost like the ACC kind of knew this was going to happen, because they kind of took some steps so that if this wasn't a court of law, they could come back and go, no, we've actually done some things in the past couple of years to try to generate additional revenue once we realized the deal with ESPN was going to be surpassed by these other leagues. Some of us laughed at the CW deal that they struck, but in actuality, that added more dollars to the bottom line for all the schools in the ACC by doing that. Even it might be CW, but it doesn't matter. They went out and tried to find more money, or bringing in the 3 schools, SMU and Cal and Stanford. Seems weird on the surface, but by expanding the number of teams in the league, it extends the payout to everybody in the league. So can they not go to court, the ACC, if that's the argument from Florida State, that they've been bamboozled by the league and weren't serviced in good faith by the league. Can't the league counter that with, well, we've done this, we've done that, we've done this over the past couple of years. So you can't say we're not acting in good faith and we're still constantly adding money to your bottom line by doing certain things. That's where I'm stuck, because I'm like, if that's their argument, that's the main way they're going to get out of it, they're going to lose it. There's no way to win that argument.
Yeah, Florida State, a lot of folks who are arguing on behalf of Florida State are forgetting one simple fact, and that is the FSU attorneys put in their 38-page lawsuit only the information that would benefit Florida State. Yes. And another thing, a lot of those folks don't understand, and I'll, in my opinion, Florida State has a better chance of making a good legal argument on the antitrust aspect of it, which is basically going to be, hey, according to this Florida statute, and maybe at some point according to this federal law, the grant of rights being so long, 20 years, and being such a big part of this $572 million penalty. Let me make clear, this is not a perfect analogy, but if you or I, Des, as media members, signed a non-compete clause, a lot of those are legal, but if it was a broad enough non-compete clause, if you signed with somebody and you're making big bucks and they make you sign in your contract, yeah, if Des leaves my media company, he's not allowed to work anywhere in North America for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Some judge somewhere is going to say that's an antitrust violation. That is an illegal restraint on trade, not because non-compete clauses are illegal, but because that specific non-compete clause is so broad with its geography. Des can't work anywhere in all of North America, or it's so broad because of the years, 10 years. We really want this man not to work in media for 10 years because he's leaving his company and this contract he signed. So it's a long way of saying many non-compete clauses are legal. But when they get too expansive in their geography, too expansive in their dollar value, too expansive in their number of years, sometimes judges say that's an antitrust violation. So Florida State's going to argue that for this very lengthy grant of rights and this very large penalty. But on the contractual issues, I don't think a lot of these folks understand what bad faith means.
Yeah.
ACC commissioners could be buffoonish, could be idiotic, could literally bump into each other like the Three Stooges, could miscalculate the market, could sign a TV deal that did turn out to be under the market, could make all sorts of other miscalculations. None of that, none of the incompetence that I just described rises to the level of bad faith. And anybody making that argument has no clue what they're talking about. Bad faith is a legal concept that requires ill intent. I have to be trying on purpose to defraud you. I have to be lying to you. I have to be undercutting you unfairly on purpose. I have to be hiding things from you dishonestly. Now, if Florida State can show examples of those things, then you get closer to bad faith. I'm telling you right now, so many Florida State fans think that just because the ACC's TV deal turned out so horribly, and these other leagues signed better deals, that is a sign of fiduciary mismanagement, or that is a sign of bad faith by itself. Absolutely, positively not. Nowhere in Florida State's 38-page lawsuit do they mention that the Atlantic Coast Conference is a lot more like the Big 12. In other words, are you really going to argue that it was the negotiating power of either ex-commissioner John Swofford or anyone else representing the ACC? You really believe that the reason the ACC's TV deal is so much smaller is that he was a lousy negotiator?
Right, yeah.
Now, I'm telling you, you can make the argument that he should have been a better negotiator. You can make the argument that he gave ESPN too much, too many options, too many delayed deadlines. There are some fair points on the Florida State side. But what Florida State is going to hear, and they don't want to hear, the biggest difference between the Big Ten and the SEC, the best, richest conferences, and the Atlantic Coast Conference is absolutely not negotiating wizardry. It is the fact that Big Ten and SEC fans watch football games in many millions more numbers and a more consistent basis. And they have more schools whose fan bases watch football to the tune of, 20 million viewer audiences and lots of 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 million audiences. And guess what? The ACC and the Big 12 do not have nearly as many of those large football TV audiences. Do you really think does anybody really think the starting point for TV negotiations has to do with somebody's negotiating wizardry? John Swofford was not holding aces, kings, and queens in his hands as he was negotiating the TV money number with his partners at ESPN. You or I could have been the commissioner of the Big Ten and the SEC, and we're starting with aces and kings and queens. Not because we're brilliant negotiators, but because it is in numerical black and white how many people over many, many years watch Big Ten football and SEC football. And it is a much lower number, provably, not my opinion. It's over many years. Absolutely undeniable, and you cannot win an argument otherwise, that the starting point, more people watch Big Ten and SEC football by a lot than watch ACC or Big 12 football. So why are those two leagues secondary financially? Because their football product isn't nearly as good. Now, again, you could say Swofford didn't get enough. You could say that he wasn't a great negotiator. But the starting point is no negotiator in the history of the world would have gotten the same for ACC football as for Big Ten and SEC football, period, end of story. And that's a hard argument, not on the antitrust side. That's a different argument. On the contractual issues of bad faith and fiduciary mismanagement, you can't just say we didn't get a good enough deal. That is not winning your case.
And that seems to be the argument too. As I get you out here, because to me, it's like they're trying to have protection for stupidity. That's basically what the end result here is. That the law doesn't protect stupidity. Like if you make a bad deal, you're going to be stuck with it more times than not. And in Florida State's mind, they've made a bad deal and they're crying about it and they feel like it's not fair, so they want out of it. And that's
right.
They feel like, and
it's not fair. It's not.
But you signed it. You signed it.
State's right that it creates a lot more value than it gets with its 1/14 roughly slice of the financial pie. But that's not a winning legal argument. You joined a league voluntarily that has shared its revenue equally for, at this point, 70 years.
Yeah.
And when you joined, it was 50 years or 40 years at that point. So again, Florida State does have some intriguing legal arguments. But anyone expecting a slam dunk on fiduciary mismanagement or bad faith is not doing their homework or does not understand the law or is listening to the wrong people. And there's a lot of con artists out there that have been telling you Florida State's on the verge of leaving the ACC as long ago as 2012. Yep. And those people have been wrong 11 years running, while people who know what they're talking about have been right for 11 years running.
That stuff is clickbait to me. Like the people that are writing the stuff where it's fluff stuff where they're writing it in. They're like, well, Florida State's going to sue the ACC. They've got a good chance to get out and stuff. And all of us reading are like, no, they don't. No, they don't.
They're going to get out, but it's going to be expensive. We just don't know how expensive.
Or it's going to be in 2036. Like it's going to be one or the other. And then to me, to close it up here, I'm just looking at it like, another thing too, you mentioned it earlier. We don't even know if the Big Ten or the SEC even want FSU. Like at this point, like I can't figure out why the SEC would even want them. They already have a Florida footprint.
SEC is more complicated.
Yeah, there's no reason for them to take them.
I think the Big Ten would, because FSU is the best football brand in the ACC. Yeah. Even when the Seminoles don't win as much on the field in football, they still get great viewership numbers overall. And it would be new geography for the Big Ten. And that means more Big Ten network subscribers, more overall viewers. They just expanded to California for the first time with Southern Cal and UCLA, to the Northwest for the first time with Oregon and Washington. It is not coincidence that every time the Big Ten expands, it's for large public universities in a new geography where they did not previously exist.
So
that also has a good football brand, right? So Florida State fits all three of those descriptions. Remember, a decade ago, the Big Ten expanded to a new geography in the form of Maryland and Rutgers.
Yeah,
who aren't
which kind of
exactly
kicked off
football
all this
powers.
with the ACC. Like that's kind of the spark of what the reason why the grant of right exists. I think people forget that they weren't
Yes,
doing it for money; they were doing it for
correct.
survival. Like they
They were
wanted to
doing
keep
it for
the ACC.
they were doing it for stability.
Yeah,
They were sacrificing some money, and of course, they were sacrificing the ability to have new windows down the road. That if TV money, the marketplace went up in a big way, the ACC was going to lose out, obviously, on that rise. But again, the Big Ten and the SEC, they've benefited from the rise of the marketplace, but their starting point is still more people watch their football product. And it's hard to slice that pie exactly. But the ACC is just much more similar to the Big 12 than it is to those other two leagues. And guess what? The ACC's finances, even with, you could argue, some bad errors of judgment, they're still similar money-wise to the Big 12. And it's because they have a similar football product to the Big 12.
It's a mess. We'll see. This is far from over, so we'll probably have more than one discussion about this as we go forward. But follow him on Twitter at David Glenn Show. Go and rate and subscribe to North Carolina Sports Network, where you can catch David Glenn Show. I think every other week you've been doing new episodes
every week
there.
And lots of little stuff in between.
Yeah, so definitely go get that content there. Mr. David Glenn, appreciate you being on, bro.
Right back at you, Des. Always good to be with you.
Coming up, Bleav Network's Joe Deleone come on and preview the two national semifinal games coming up this weekend here in college football. You're listening to Franchise Players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.
Franchise players are often referred to as the face of the franchise.
Thanks for sticking around, listening to Franchise Players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com here every Friday afternoon. You can catch a brand new episode. We'll get you caught up on Panthers, Hornets, ACC hoops, you name it, here in the Triad of North Carolina on WWVG 1470 AM and WTOB 980 AM and 96.7 FM. Shout out to Kevin Avery from the Four Man Rush who joined us earlier, and of course David Glenn, who broke down the whole Florida State versus the ACC fiasco that we're watching burn from afar. Joining us for right now, he is from the Bleav Podcast Network's producer and host, Joe Deleone. You can catch him on the Ruffino and Joe Show. Follow them on Twitter /X at Ruffino in Joe Show, and go and check out their channel on YouTube as well, where you can catch new episodes each week as they dissect the SEC and college football. What's going on, Joe? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It feels a little weird this past week getting these exhibition style bowl games, but man, I'm excited just to talk about this playoff. It feels like it's been forever since we broke down the four seeds and the way that it came out. I'm ready for these guys to play and to see who's going to be competing for a national championship.
Man, I just watched my North Carolina Tar Heels. Well, I didn't watch it, but I just saw my North Carolina Tar Heels and West Virginia in the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte, where it was about 90% West Virginia fans. So yeah, I don't know, just crazy. Like, you're right. These appetizer bowls, I call them, the ones that are like, you don't even know who's playing half the time because a lot of kids have opted out or they're in the transfer portal now. So it's like it's really hard to even figure out who's on the rosters unless you're in the college football playoff. And that's where I want to start off. We're just going to keep it simple with this segment here while I got Joe, and I'm glad I've got him. I want to go through 1 through 4 why that particular team should win the national championship. And, of course, we're going to start off at the top. For those that don't know, the semifinal games are going to be played this Monday, New Year's Day. Semifinal number 1 is at the Rose Bowl. It's 4th seed Alabama taking on number 1 seed Michigan. The second game is at 8:45 p.m. At the All-State Sugar Bowl. That's 3rd seed Texas taking on 2nd seed Washington. Both games on ESPN. Let's start off at the very top. Number 1 seed Michigan. Why will Michigan win the national championship, Joe?
I think the big reason why Michigan could pull out this game and then end up winning the national championship is all in line with the fact that this is a senior-driven team. This team is loaded with guys who decided to come back last year. The return of Blake Corum and having Donovan Edwards in their run game makes this team very, very strong on the offensive side of the football. But what I really point to for why Michigan has been so formidable this season and why it felt like every time we came into they didn't have a lot of difficult matchups, but whenever we came into a difficult matchup for them, some people wanted to doubt what they were capable of doing, but they stepped up to the plate along their defensive line, and they dominated in the trenches. They have 2 deep with 2 different units on their defensive line that have just completely smothered and beaten up opposing offensive lines, opposing quarterbacks. So if there is a team that is built to slow down Alabama's explosive offense that has been really good over the past month of the season, if there is a team that has the linebackers to bottle up Jalen Milroe and properly spy him like Georgia was unable to do, it's going to be Michigan. It's all going to be contingent on what their defense does, and if they can continue to carry this team, and also if J.J. McCarthy is not completely mistake-free, but plays cleaner football than we've seen him play in spurts in these bigger games in the final stretch of the year.
It feels like this is Michigan's to lose, doesn't it? Like, it feels like this is kind of their story to kind of write. You know, they were there last year. All the stuff with Harbaugh, the dude's been suspended twice in one season. Yeah. I mean, you know, all this stuff swirling around him. Is he going to stay? I could see a scenario where they win the national championship and he walks off and goes back to the NFL, to my Panthers. But, you know, we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. Let's go to second seed, the Washington Huskies. I felt like Michigan and Washington were the two best teams in college football all season. They're in the semifinal going up against Texas. Why will number 2 seed Washington win the national championship?
Plain and simple, because they're the most unique team that's in the playoff right now. You look at all these other teams, how their roster is constructed. They run the football. They play really physical, stout defense along the line of scrimmage, like I just talked about with Michigan. But Washington has a good O-line. They've got an improving run game that was, you know, got better as the season went on in the final stretch of the year. But what has made them so hard to keep up with is that they've got 3 top 100 pick receivers in Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, and Rome Odunze. And they're just able to stretch opposing defenses on a level that nobody else in the country could do, because Michael Penix has a cannon for an arm. They almost play offense. The way I've compared them is as a, you know, fast break style basketball team that's just trying to move the ball up the court as quickly as possible. But most importantly, it forces other teams to stoop down to their style of play and try to play their game, because they're trying to play catch up. We saw that happen in the Pac-12 championship game, is that Washington scores so quickly, they get on the board so quickly, that Oregon completely abandons this slow, methodical, short passing attack that has gotten them that far. And because they abandoned it, Bo Nix started making mistakes. They weren't running the ball as well. Washington's offensive style is just so unique. And I feel that none of these teams, if they go down by 7 or plus points and they need to play catch up, they're just not fully equipped to score it as quickly as Washington can.
That's good. That's good. And I like Penix. I felt like he was probably one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year, or in the country this year. It's just that he plays on the left coast. You know, people don't get a chance to see him because they're playing at 10 o'clock at night or whatever.
Right.
So a lot of mystery with Washington, although it shouldn't be, with them being one of the 2 undefeated teams. Third seed, Texas, the Texas Longhorns, the Big 12 champs, taking on Washington in the Sugar Bowl in that nightcap game on Monday. Why will the Texas Longhorns win the national championship?
I think we have to point back to the way the Texas played against Alabama. And if they can replicate that performance, that is just a clear indicator that they're built to win this national title. And when they played Alabama and they beat them, and I know that was so long ago, that was obviously their most difficult game. And they haven't had necessarily as tough of a matchup, maybe Oklahoma, since then. And they've skated a little bit since then because they haven't really been totally challenged, which is a concern. But the way that they played against Alabama is, you know, they ran the ball so well. They were aggressive and attacked Jalen Milroe, and they forced him to make mistakes. They forced him into turnovers. And then on top of that, they took the top off of Alabama's defense, which after that game, nobody has been able to do. So if they continue to be able to stretch teams vertically with Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell, if they're able to do what they did against Alabama, take the top off of any defense that they face, then they're going to be very hard to keep up with.
And then finally, the literal proverbial elephant in the room, the 4th seed, the Alabama Crimson Tide. I feel like we've seen this movie before where I feel like Alabama's going to win this whole thing, and we're all going to sit back and go, why do we even play the season? Like, we knew this was going to happen. Why will Alabama win the national championship?
Well, they're the hottest team right now in the country, the way that I see it. And I know that all 4 of these teams have played good football down the stretch, but for the way that they've transitioned since that Texas loss and got better on a week-to-week basis, they are without a doubt the hottest team. They're going to win, and if they do win, it's because, one, nobody can figure out a way to bottle up Jalen Milroe, and you might be able to do kind of like what Georgia did, force him to make mistakes as a passer and maybe have a poor completion percentage or take a sack here or there, but he is just such a good athlete, and he's so fast that he is going to find ways to escape the pocket and pick up extra yards, and if he does what he did in the SEC championship game and completely take over, then it is going to be hard to keep up with them. And then on the flip side of things, their defense is just unbelievable. Their front seven, their secondary, front to back, they're one of the few defenses that I just don't see having any weaknesses. They have been unbelievable down the stretch, and because of that hot streak that they're on, I think that sets them up perfectly to do what Alabama does best. Play, maybe a little bit sloppy at times, but play their best football in the most important games of the year.
Man. And next year it'll be better, guys, because it'll be 12 teams and FSU will have an argument. And yeah, we'll finally get it to the point where it'll start making a little bit more sense. But I just can't shake this feeling that we're going to have Alabama versus Texas in the national championship. Alabama's going to beat Texas in a rematch, and then a one-loss Alabama team is going to be national champ. Like, I feel like we've seen this before. And it's the same thing. Texas has to beat Alabama twice, basically, to become national champion.
Right. And I always say this, that it's hard to beat a good team twice. So that's a nightmare scenario for Texas if they do end up winning it. And I personally have been in on Washington this whole time. I'm rooting for them. And I think that, like I was saying a second ago, that the fact that they're so unique right now, they're my favorite. I think that because nobody really favorably matches up with them. And the other part of this too, luck factors into this. And I know that people kind of scoff at that notion of like, oh, it's, what the heck does that even mean? A lot of times the luckiest team that finds ways to win when they're playing bad football and the ball just bounces their way, which has happened the entire year when they had the flu apparently against Arizona State and all those bad games that they played, they still found ways to win. So that's kind of where I lean. I'm hoping that Alabama doesn't just get, handed another easy opportunity here.
It's on Michigan, really. Like, because I'm kind of rooting for Michigan. That's where I'm at right now, because I've kind of watched their journey the past 2 years in particular, and this is the last thing. This is the last box that Jim Harbaugh needs to check off. He's beaten Ohio State. He's winning the Big Ten. Michigan football's back. The only thing that's left is to win this national championship, and it's purely selfish reasons because I want him to come coach my Carolina Panthers. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Follow Joe on Twitter for the Ruffino and Joe show at Ruffino in Joe show. Go and subscribe to their YouTube channel where you can catch SEC analysis and college football analysis pretty much year round. So Joe, appreciate you coming on and representing Bleav.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And that's it for Franchise Players here for Friday, December the 29th, 2023. Back with a new episode next week. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson. You've been listening to Franchise Players on WTOB 980 AM and WWBG 1470 AM. Have a great weekend.